Hi, I'm Peter DeLucia. Today I'm here with the owner of Tator's Garage, Chuck Tator. Hey Chuck, how you doing?
How you doing, Peter?
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here. The history about you, your family, and this location is enormous, the amount of history that's here.
A lot to talk about.
So why don't we just start at the beginning? 1908, your grandfather had a garage.
Well, actually, prior to 1908, my grandfather had a livery station in Richfield on Main Street. Then when the automobiles started getting more popular, he decided to repair automobiles. So he rented a barn from the Meade family, and the now carriage house for the Walkabout Country Club was his original garage.
That's very cool. So when people now go to the Walkabout Country Club, they see the history there. The carriage house, where we have now Sweet 16 parties, political events, all different sport events, that was the original Tator's Garage.
Correct.
And the Meade family, I mean, you start thinking about all of these names, Meade Street and Gilbert, and why don't you tell me a little bit about some of your grandfather's first employees?
Well, we had Abby Gilbert, we had Elvira Hoyt here as secretaries. Clarence Bounton worked here from the Bounton family. So we've had a lot of old family names from town.
How about our first town supervisor?
Yeah, Alvin Jordan. He moved down from Maine in 1927, and my grandfather gave him his first job here in town.
Very cool. So before he was supervisor, worked at Tator's Garage.
Correct.
And I know you were telling me a few other interesting things about the fire department.
Yes, in the antique fire truck for South Salem Fire Department is a 1924 Dodge, and they called it a screen job, which was a delivery truck. It was a rollover, and my grandfather and Leo Gustafson cut the body off of it and mounted 2 soda water acid tanks on it, and that was the first fire truck in town. And the fire department was here from the 30s all the way up to early 1950s when they built the first firehouse here on Route 35.
So you could have some of the guys working here in the shop, and there's a call for a fire, and would they be some of the same fellas that would jump on a fire truck and go?
All the mechanics that worked here would stop work and grab a fire truck and go put out a fire.
Wow, wow, that's a small town, and you had a real influence in the development of Lewisboro. Now I know when we had a small school starting here, and the school system was just starting, we had to get involved with school buses. Didn't you play an integral role with the busing also?
Yeah, my grandfather bought all the school buses, and they were all the old blue and white buses from the 40s and 50s, and they were all kept here on the property. Also, a lot of the mechanics that worked in the shop here were also the bus drivers.
So you had the fire department, you had the school bus drivers, and you had the garage. So this was a real integral part of the town back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Correct, yeah, the town wasn't very big back then.
35 really wasn't the same as it is now. When people think of going through Lewisboro, you think of Route 35, you think of 121, but back in the day when your grandfather was here, it really was different.
Yes, this was the main street. This was actually the main road from Danbury to White Plains, and back then when they built the original roads, they would go around all of the mountains. So that's why we're located here, because this was the main road. And then in the early 30s, the Corps of Engineers came in and straightened out Route 35.
Okay, and it still just had you right, you know, as 35 comes through here, you just right, quick turn right off 35.
Just off of 35, yes.
Okay, very, very interesting. Now, why don't we go back to around 1913 and talk about how Tator's Garage became Tator's Dodge.
In 1913, the Dodge brothers announced that they were going to start building cars. So they said that they wanted an originally 25 charter dealerships. And in 1913, from what I was told, they had over 1,000 applications for 25 dealerships. And my grandfather was the third one to sign up with Horace and John Dodge. We were actually distributors for the Dodge Brothers cars for the Upper East Coast, because Katona used to have a railhead.
Okay.
So when the vehicles were built and shipped out of Detroit to Katona, then all of the mechanics would go down, unload them off of the rail cars, bring them back here, partially assemble them, and little satellite dealers in this area would come and pick them up from us.
So when did the operation move from the carriage house over on Meade Street over to this location where we are today.
Yeah, my grandfather bought this piece of property and barn in 1914, and he bought it with $600 and a horse. That was the price tag. It's been expanded a couple of times since then to accommodate, bigger bays. And
how about where we are now in this bay?
this particular bay in front of us is the original barn, and then it was expanded back and then over 2 more bays.
So back then in 1914, I know we've got a Viper behind us right now. That wasn't what the Dodge brothers were telling your grandfather that they wanted him to sell.
No.
What were we looking at back in 1914 and the early 1900s of being the automobile of choice here in Lewisboro?
Yeah, well, back then the automobiles had no luxuries or heat or anything like that, and they were pretty much, they looked like a truck, but they were actually a car, but they were no frills, skinny tires, and tough to keep them running.
So, we talked about the rollover that became a fire truck, but I would think a lot of, back in the early 1900s here in Lewisboro, you still had a lot of farming going on. You still had a lot of industrial things going on for, not too far from here. So what were really were there more farm machinery that Dodge was producing, or were there any like the older pickup trucks, or what was really?
There were more work trucks. Dodge first started out building cars, and then the Graham brothers, who were building trucks, the Dodge brothers bought them, and then they were Dodge trucks at that point. But there was a lot of equipment. All of the town garages were all Dodges. All of the surrounding towns, we would sell all of the trucks to them. Even all of the newer school buses, all the way up to the 1970s, when then Dodge stopped building larger vehicles.
How about police vehicles back then?
Police vehicles also.
So Chuck, you're 3rd generation. So it's your grandfather, your father, and now you. Little bit of family history there. Your father had a twin, and you had 2 dealerships for a while.
Correct, yes. The other dealership was up in Brewster. The old board and milk factory was our other dealership, the big old brick building up there in Brewster. And my father had a twin. His name was George. My father was running the dealership in Brewster, and George was down here. Unfortunately, he passed away in the early 50s, and my father closed the one in Brewster, and my father came down to this building and ran this one.
And back then, it wasn't just Dodges that you sold.
Yeah, we had Dodge, Plymouth, and DeSoto.
The famous DeSoto.
Yeah.
Now, you grew up working in the shop.
Correct. I started sweeping floors when I was about 11.
And when did you start actually using a wrench and tuning up cars?
Well, before I had my license, they gave me a couple of cars that were going to go to junk, and I got them running and drove them around on the property. And the service manager that was here that taught me, Leo Gustafson, he worked here for 64 years.
Oh, wow.
So he taught me a lot, old school mechanics.
So then at some point you start going from the carburetors to fuel injection, and eventually you can wear a real fancy hat because you're known as the Viper Wizard, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
So you can put a cape on and a hat, and you're working on a totally different engine than what you grew up on.
Yeah, when the Dodge started building the Dodge Viper, like behind us, in 1992, we sold a couple of them early on, and we started working on them, and then I built a reputation on working on them, doing performance work, and I actually have Viper customers from all over the East Coast that come see us.
So if you've got a Viper, whether you're Jay Leno or David Letterman, this would be the place to bring your Viper.
Correct.
And you're also very involved in the Viper Club.
Yes, I'm actually the National Technical Director. I'm the Vice President of the New York, Connecticut region, and we do quite a few events all summer long.
That's very cool. Do you have a Viper yourself?
I have a 94 myself.
Very cool. Very
Same
cool.
color red.
Same color red?
Fast red.
Is it faster than this one, though? Or?
No, this one's got a little more work done to it.
So now we always think about Dodge, we think about Vipers, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. We're going to talk about the whole Dodge franchise and all that. But before we go there, you're still a regular garage.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, even when you were the franchise and now that you're not, I think people need to realize that this is a great place to bring any car that they have to get service done. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? You're here, right, supervising the mechanics, and you're working on the cars yourself, which is really, look, hey, I learned a long time ago from my grandfather. My father has said it a million times. Some of the things in life that are the most important things is you need to have a good doctor and you need to have a good mechanic.
You got it.
And maybe the mechanic first.
Yeah, you got to get to the doctors.
Exactly, because you're not without the car running, you ain't going to make it to the doctor. That's exactly a good point. So why don't you tell me a little about what you guys do here at Tator's Garage?
Yeah, we pretty much now work on any brand car. We've got all the equipment to work on, other brands other than Chrysler Corporation and Dodges. You can go online if there's something technical I need to know on a particular brand. You can go right online, look up everything. So nuts and bolts all turn the same. So that hasn't changed. It's just the design and electronics have changed.
Well, if you can work on exotic vehicles like the Viper, I mean, that says a lot, because it's very difficult to find not only a good mechanic, but to find an exotic car mechanic that could work, under those very specific parameters. It's very important.
Right. And mechanics really haven't changed, although newer cars, there's a lot more electronics, a lot more just to replace a part and off you go. We actually strive in fixing the problem, not throwing a part at it and hope it gets fixed.
So real diagnostics.
Yeah, real diagnostics.
So we talked about, the Dodge dealership and the franchise, and why don't you kind of walk me through from 2008, 2009, when things were starting to happen, to where we are now in 2015 and where things stand.
Okay, in 2008, Chrysler Corporation had 7 big meetings with all 3,000 of their Chrysler and Dodge dealers around the country. And they presented to us that Chrysler Corporation is in financial trouble. Excuse me. And they needed our help, meaning the dealer body. They asked us to step up to the plate. It was up to us to save Chrysler Corporation, buy more inventory, buy more parts, buy more tools. And it was the same thing in the 70s.
I was going to say, it's not the first time that happened. Back in the 70s was another time where the dealers stepped up to the plate for the corporation.
Yes. In the 70s, Chrysler was in financial trouble, and all of the dealers stepped up to the plate and saved the corporation. Then Lee Iacocca took over Chrysler Corporation, turned it all around, paid back the government loan 3 years early. So they presented the same thing to us in 2008. So naturally, all of the dealers, we have a vested interest in selling their cars, so we stepped up to the plate and helped Chrysler out. Then in 2009, instead of all the dealerships helping the corporation, Chrysler Corporation filed federal bankruptcy. So that meant that the dealerships were basically on their own. They weren't protected by state franchise laws. And they decided to close 789 out of the 3,000 dealerships. Actually, the orders for the closures came out of Washington. And they said that it was restructuring is what they called it. So 789 of us got closed. On May 14th of 2009, we got our termination letter. June 9th of 2009, we were gone. It was 3 weeks.
Not even a month.
They shut us down. Not even a month. They shut us down.
After being in business almost 100 years at that point.
Yeah, it was 95 years.
95 years for the family, 100 years, 95 years for the franchise with Dodge.
Correct.
Which was originally forged with the Dodge brothers.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it didn't make any sense to me at the time, because any sale helps a corporation, whether it's 1 or 100 car sales. Any sales help a corporation. So it made no sense at the time. Later on in 2009, there was an investigation as to why these 789 dealers got closed, and come to find out, The only thing that ties all 789 of us together is our political affiliation. Had nothing to do with size, sales of the dealership.
If it was 25%, if it was 50%, I mean, you wonder, okay, are you tying something together there? But when you look at 100% across the board of the same political affiliation as the only thing that ties all of these dealerships together, especially with the other information that we've heard and have seen throughout this whole situation, that many of the dealers, just like yourself, it wasn't like you were in debt to the corporation.
Correct.
It wasn't like you were having any issues there. You were a brick and mortar that was owned by you.
Correct.
You had the franchise that was owned by you, and all you did was spend money to them to buy the parts, to bring the vehicles in and sell the vehicles. And you really, even advertising, there wasn't really advertising involved here, because who didn't know Tator's Dodge?
Yeah.
95 years in the business. It's not like you're running commercials and doing things like that. So that's very disturbing.
Yeah, the dealerships that they closed down, from small stores like me, they closed down several of them. The largest one they closed down had 204 employees, and they were selling 1,600 units in a year. So once we got the list of the dealers that did get closed, then it was obvious something's wrong, because that wasn't restructuring. That was a planned attack on dealerships.
That's really sad, but the story continues, and it's not over yet. I mean, you're still in a lawsuit regarding this.
Yeah, most of the closed dealers have now joined a lawsuit. A lot of it's individual. There's some class action, because we got closed with no compensation whatsoever. And since the orders came out of Washington, the premise of the lawsuit is eminent domain. But at the time, this administration said that we were worthless. So we didn't get any compensation for our business. So that's what the lawsuit is about.
I mean, how could you be worthless if you've got, once again, you've got a business that's been survived 95 years?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a reputation that has been built on not only your back, on your work, on your family. That name you've supported for 95 years, the Dodge name, to say that that's worthless, and then find out this, it was very upsetting. I know it was very upsetting to the town. Back in 2009, 2010, we were involved. We're trying to help where we could. I know you got the congressman involved. That was locally.
Yep.
But I mean, it was the decision had been made. Sadly, as you pointed out to us, and then who would have thought that you have a administration that targeted 789 dealers and they all were Republican.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
Yeah,
Chuck, it really is.
We survived 2 world wars and about 7 economic upswings up until this administration.
And what does political affiliation have to do with working on cars and selling cars?
That's
absolutely nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
So that's what gives it gives politics a bad name.
Yeah, it's like throwing your grandmother down the stairs.
Well, you know what? That's why what I'm happy to see is while that isn't totally behind you, the original name Tator's Garage is up on the wall.
Yep.
And we've got a garage full of cars that are being worked on, and you've got a lot of supporters that all your customers that are still coming here, and they know that what, regardless of the name hanging outside, it's the guy and his staff that's in the shop that's doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah, we're doing okay. Like I said originally, we work on just about any car. And we take care of all the local residents, and even residents from far away, especially with these Vipers. They come from all over just for us to work on.
Now that's when you got a reputation like that, you're gonna have people that follow them. By like the best thing is word of mouth. So hey, I brought my Viper here, I brought my car here, and you know what? Problem got solved. I wasn't raked over the coals. I feel good about it. It's a good experience, and my car's running fine. I'm going to come back, and you know what? I would suggest you bring your car there too. What's better than that?
Yeah, word of mouth, best advertising you could ever have.
So a little bit more about the history. You were telling me something earlier that I thought was very interesting. The Richfield livery.
Yes, my grandfather had a livery station right on Main Street in Richfield. That's where he started working on horse and carriages. And then the automobiles started taking over. But he also met my grandmother in Richfield, which her family name is Olmsted, which Olmsted Lane in Richfield, the Olmsteds, you can trace them all the way back to the Mayflower. So there's a lot of history. And then he rented in South Salem, the barn from the Meade family, and then finally bought this piece of property in 1914.
And then there still was a horse involved in 1914, like
got
you
it.
said. So $600 in a horse gets you a barn and a piece of property.
That's it.
But yeah, no, I think about when we drive into Ridgefield, when I come off west and come past there, you see Olmsted is right there. So when you mentioned that, it like was immediate click there.
Yeah, the fourth house in on the left is where my grandmother was born. The house that's on the corner on 35 in Olmsted was the original homestead for the Olmsted.
The Olmsted homestead.
Yeah,
Say that 5 times
yes.
fast. Well, I tell you, I definitely want to walk around the garage. There was so much history in the garage. And, before we do that, didn't you have a store back at one time? I remember years ago, you had a little I don't know if it was a gift shop or there was something up on, right up by the front of the property.
Yeah, the original little square building up on Spring Street there on the road was actually a mobile tin building. That's a tin building from Mobil Corporation because we had Mobil gas here. We had Mobil here for over 50 years until the tanks finally gave up and we took all that out. But during World War II, it was actually a country store to help out local residents. The produce was sold there, farm tools were sold, and then the building got closed down, and then my mom opened it up as a little antique store in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
Yeah, I remember from then driving by and seeing that all the time. Yeah.
Tator's Country Store, we reignited that old name. So yeah, there's a lot of history in that little building too.
That's really cool. I mean, I always think of, we spoke about the show American Pickers.
Yes.
And yeah, I would say those two guys would have a field day walking around here and making you offers on all different kinds of stuff, because I see from, the original cash register that's in the lobby to it looks like probably, and I'm not an expert, like a 1960s or early 70s Coca-Cola machine that's working, that you could get a Coke for 75 cents, which is still not too bad for this day and age. That's great. So I'm waiting for my Dodge to be worked on, throw 75 cents in there and get a nice glass bottle Coca-Cola.
Yeah, there's a lot of old stuff here. A lot of it we still use. There's a lot of old tools. We do a lot of antique cars, so a lot of the old equipment is still well used.
Well, it's always needing the right tool for the right job. My grandfather one grandfather was a plumber and a mechanic, and the other grandfather was a carpenter, and they always said that too. If you had the right tool for the job, you can get it done. And I would think if you're working on a 1948, Woody, you need to have certain tools to work on that and make it a hell of a lot easier than trying to find a new snap-on socket for it.
You won't find tools that fit those old cars, and we still have them here and use them.
All right, so Chuck, I'm not one of the American Pickers, but I definitely want to get a chance to look around and you give me a little history lesson about some of the stuff you have here.
Sure, we can walk around. I'll give you the nickel tour.
All right, cool. Or 75 cents for the Coke.
There you go.
All right. All right, so Chuck, where I'm standing right now is original hollowed Tator's ground.
Correct. First 3 bays are the original garage.
Okay.
And it was actually a horse stable owned by the Lawrences. And the main house was built in 1872.
That's right across from the barn.
Correct. And we figured the barn was built 1871 because back then when they built the colonials, they would build the barn first to hold everything. Then in the 20s, my grandfather expanded this way 3 more bays to accommodate more cars. And then in the early 30s, he expanded 2 more bays that way.
What I didn't see was a pit. Do you guys have a pit? Or
No, never had a pit. We always had a lift.
Always had a lift, all right.
Yeah, the pits are dangerous. So we always had a lift, and we only have the 1 lift. So most of our work is done on the floor on jack stands.
Jacks and crawlers.
Yep.
I'm really impressed with what I'm looking at behind me. I mean, here is what, a 1948 Woody?
Yeah, Chrysler Woody convertible.
And it's all fully functional.
Everything is fully functional. It was completely restored, I'm going to guess at least 20 years ago. Car's in immaculate shape. And we keep it every spring. We do a little to it just to keep it running and change fluids.
I see the carbs often.
Yeah, carburetor's up on the bench. I need to clean it out. It hasn't been cleaned in a while. So other than that, it's
So it's not, once again, not only Dodges. I mean, you're going to do restoration work on antique automobiles, and I see you got a lot of restoration to work on this Stingray.
Yeah.
I'm a Corvette fan. I got to tell you, I love vets, but this color leaves a lot to be desired also here. I don't know.
Yeah.
How long has this been sitting, and where did they find it?
It's been sitting in a garage for, I'm going to guess, for quite some time. And he wants to get it running, put it back on the road. So we do all the mechanical, electrical to get a car running. We don't do any body work here.
No body work. Yeah, this
it was
body work and a paint job.
Odd color for the 70s, but in the 70s they had some interesting colors.
Well, a lot of times, though, the odd body colors are worth a heck of a lot more because
Correct.
you don't find them, they weren't produced. So
Right.
that could be something where, he may be sitting on a gold mine here and not know it.
Yeah.
All right, so from the Corvette, but then we've got the Viper, and that's the bread and butter. We got the red Viper, and behind me over here, I see we got the blue with the white stripe.
Yes.
Why don't you take a look at this guy over here?
Yeah, we do a lot of Viper work. They come from all over. This is a 1996 Viper GTS. This was the first year for the coupe, and we're doing a lot of maintenance to it. Plus we're doing performance work to it. We're actually adding nitrous to it and going to make it go faster.
So you can add nitrous to it, and what about supercharge something like this?
The red Viper that was behind us over on the lift, it has a supercharger on it.
And you could do that to this one also.
Correct.
Why don't you show me the supercharger?
Sure.
So here's a supercharger that you put in.
Correct. This supercharger is made by Row Racing, and we install them. This should develop about 750 horse or so on the ground, so it'll be quite fast.
So 750 horsepower for our viewers would equate to what kind of speed could this car do on a track?
Well,
Notice I said track, not on our roads in Lewisboro.
No. On a track, if you had enough room, you could probably do 180 miles an hour without too much trouble.
What about 0 to 60?
0 to 60, I'm going to guess a little over 3 seconds.
So you're moving.
Yeah.
You're moving, you're pinned back.
This will make you move.
What do you think about something now when you look at the electric cars like the Teslas that are coming out, and they, your brain kind of sloshes in the back of your head because you're just hitting that electric power and you're moving compared to something like this. I mean, I can't see them ever comparing to me, as an aficionado of gas-powered engines and, Corvettes, and I had a 1978 Trans Am when I was growing up that I had a great time with. But these Teslas they're something else. What do you think about the whole revolution going to those kind of electric cars?
It's a new technology. I mean, electric vehicles is nothing new. They had electric vehicles in the 20s.
But cool electric vehicles, like a Tesla.
Yeah, the Teslas are pretty neat looking, and with today's technology, you can make an electric car go pretty good. I've got a friend that built an electric motorcycle, a drag racing motorcycle, and he broke all kinds of records with it. And it's all electric. It goes down the track, doesn't make any noise other than tires squealing.
What about handling and performance on something like that? If you were going to put up a Viper versus a Tesla now, if we were going to do a race, what would we be looking at? Is it a comparable class, or?
The Viper still outhandles most cars because it's based on a race car design. The Tesla goes pretty good, it handles pretty good, but it's not a Viper.
So I really feel like I just went back in time, and even just the smell of all these cards. Tell me about this whole card system you have going on here. In the age of laptops and iPads and everything else, this is cool.
Well, we're in the parts room, and all the parts that are here are inventoried on parts cards. They're handwritten. They have the date, the last time we sold a part, the price of the part. So these are actually part inventory cards, and they go back to the teens. I mean, I've got some old parts cards that 19.
So if how does the file system work though? If I want to find a part for
all numeric.
All numeric.
All numeric, real easy. To put this on a computer, it would take years to input all this information. So system still works, why change it?
So if we go back to here, we've got the 1988 looks like the last time, so if I'm looking at this right, the last time this was purchased was back in '88?
Correct.
And it's in stock right now?
One left.
Yeah, one left.
Yep.
And it's a grill kit or a grid kit?
Grid kit.
Grid kit.
That's to repair electric defrosters, window defrosters.
So, we could do like a test. We could kind of pick any card. Okay, a plug. Do you know what this plug is for? 1999.
Yeah, without looking at it, I'm not sure what it is.
You don't know part number 4343822?
Not offhand.
Uh-oh. We stumped the wizard.
Yeah.
It probably is not a Viper part. That's what I can say.
It's not a Viper part.
So this is the card and number system in action here.
Correct. This would be aisle 2, section K, and then the number of the bin itself.
I see a lot of handwriting on here. Could I make the assumption that some of this is your grandfather's writing?
Yep, some of these are my grandfather. Some of them are my father, and then we had a parts guy that was here for many years, Paul Kennedy, and I recognize his handwriting. So yeah, a lot of the cards in front of the bins are handwritten.
So most of the time, you can come back here right in your own parts shop and find something that you need.
Oh yeah, we use a lot of parts all the time.
That's great.
And the cards lead me right to where they are.
Cool. So here it is, a wooden original National Cash Register Corporation cash register from your grandfather.
Yes, this was his original cash register. If I load it with paper, it prints out George T. Tator, South Salem, telephone 54, 2 digits.
So the old switchboard operator, you plug it in 54 and connect to Tator's garage.
You got it.
That is, and she still works.
Yes, we still use it.
So Chuck, something I remember from growing up, the old Coca-Cola machine where you'd have to put the money in, open a door, pull the glass bottle out, and here it is in action.
Yep, we still use it. We still serve Coca-Cola out of it. And it's 75 cents.
It's great. You can still get the glass bottles that they go in there.
Yes, they still make them.
So the one thing I'm missing that I didn't see are the famous pinup calendars that you see in the in mechanic shops. I saw one over there. It looks like some beachgoers or something. Yeah. But what happened to the old 1930s, 1940s?
Yeah, they were taken down a while ago.
Chuck, I want to really thank you so much for being on the show today and teaching us so much about how the Tator family was so influential in the town of Lewisboro.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming and listening.
Thank you, and thank you for watching LCTV, Lewisboro Channel 20. But before I leave, I'd like to be able to get a job here if I could work the cash register.
Sure.
Let's give it a shot. Oh, there we go. Am I hired?
You're hired.
All right, thanks, Chuck.
Okay.
Great being here today.
Thank you.
This is the true Viper wizard. Chuck actually took away his powers and petrified him, and now he lives in the office, and Chuck has all of his powers now. But as you can see, he has the power to shrink a regular Viper into this miniature size, which is all I can afford. I may have to just take this and sneak out.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.